He just lost his consciousness for a second, and when he came back to it, he was not in his right mind. Suddenly I had to face the reality of not having a father and being in a family of 5 kids. Like, I grew up with the idea God is good, but my life was not good. So how come those two things coexist at the same time? So for a couple of months, I would entertain the ideas of taking my life. I would literally go to the bridges, and thinking about what if. I remember I was sitting on the kitchen floor, shaking, thinking about this, like, am I gonna talk to my family? Am I gonna open up? Am I gonna tell them what I'm going through? Or am I just done? I was leaving my house, and I was weeping. And I just suddenly realized, like, the same streets that I used to walk to school or to church or anywhere, like, I am now escaping the literal war, and I don't think I'm ever coming back.
Well, it's been a hot minute, but we're back with season 2 of the CCTri Podcast, and it actually feels a little weird. It's been a couple months since I've, recorded one, and I was, getting out the cameras and all the mic gear and everything, and I'm like, wait, how do I do this? Do I plug it in? I almost forgot to hit record on the mics, so that would have been unfortunate, but I remembered, so we're good. We're saved. We don't have to re-record this episode. But today, we are back for first guest of the season, Miss Liza Koziieva.
I knew that we would get here right away. So
Koziieva.
Let me say my full legal name in Ukrainian. Koziieva Yelizaveta Alexandrivna. But I go by Liza Koziieva in America. So
it did take me a couple weeks to get the pronunciation of your last name.
And you already forgot.
I was just not confident. It's not that I forgot. I just wasn't confident.
Yeah.
So I did it with hesitation in case I was wrong.
Yeah.
So, but Liza, actually, we're sitting here in my house. And this house used to be your house as well.
I know. I walked in the kitchen. I'm like, oh, I'm home.
Yeah, she didn't even knock. And I'm like, just make yourself at home.
After I opened the door.
Yeah, but Liza was my housemate for almost a year before she abandoned me for California.
Girl, I moved out and you got married, so who abandoned who?
It was like 9 months after I moved out. And I even had another housemate in between that time.
True.
So.
Was her name Elizabeth as well?
It was.
See, she could not get over me.
Yeah. So you have the Ukrainian Elizabeth is your name.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So Liza is one of our Ukrainians.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember, so you moved in with me when you came to America, and I remember texting you, I got your WhatsApp, and I was messaging her trying to do really, easy English, because all the other Ukrainians who had come up to that point were not as proficient in English. So she started texting me back, and I was like, wait a second. This doesn't sound like Google Translate. That's what I expected to happen was a little Google Translate action, but there was, American slang and stuff in it. And I think I asked you, I'm like, wait, can you, actually speak English? And I was the only person to get a Ukrainian that could really speak English, and I'm like, I started going to Robert and people and bragging, and I'm like, my Ukrainian speaks English. And you do. So how did you learn to speak English?
Honestly, good school. I was just lucky. I wasn't lucky because my parents were really intentional with all of me and my siblings, there's 5 kids in my family, for all of us to speak good English. My dad always used to say that, Liza, one day English will open so many opportunities for you. And I used to roll my eyes as a middle child would, why would you force me to learn it? But yeah, here we are. I speak pretty fluently. I hope so.
Yeah, pretty grateful you put in the work to learn English.
That again?
You're pretty grateful that you put in the work to learn English.
Yes, no, for sure. I feel like it definitely gave me a lot of opportunities even before coming to States. I was studying for my degree in English program, so I used to study with a lot of international students back home, and then knowing English was the reason I got hired for a really good job, which I used to work for a couple years. So yeah, so even before coming to America, knowing English really paid off, even back in Ukraine. So yeah, I really am grateful.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, how did your life start? Where were you? You were you're Ukrainian.
Yes.
Where were you born? How'd that happen?
How did it happen? Ask my parents. I grew up born and raised Kharkiv, Ukraine. It's quite east of Ukraine. I am one of 5 kids. I'm the middle child, but I think I'm the best.
Spoken like a true middle child.
Yes. I grew up at PK. And I didn't know that there was so much stigma about being a PK growing up, to be honest.
Is that just an American thing, or is that like an international thing? Like pastor kids just having the stigma?
I feel like I became aware of it later in life. You live with that stigma just a little bit, but not as much. Maybe because my church wasn't big enough either. Like, maybe it influenced it somehow. But being a Christian in Ukraine was already like being, how'd you say it, like a black sheep already. So like, it doesn't matter whether you're a PK or not, like, but if you're like outspoken Christian, you're already a black sheep kind of. So people would not have stayed long enough to find out that you're actually a PK too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my dad, was a pastor on my church, so I used to go to church every Sunday, no excuses. And just like being a Christian was pretty normal for my family, but I knew that it was not normal for everybody else. So Christianity, I wouldn't say that it's super new to Ukraine, but like being a Protestant, is it a word? Yeah. Protestant.
So close.
So like Orthodox Christianity has been in Ukraine for a while, but it's pretty like nominal Christianity. Like you can say that you're an Orthodox Christian, but you would go to church once a year, hopefully, for Easter. So being a Christian who actually goes to church every week, that was something weird. So it was pretty new, and my parents were really intentional about us growing up without committing the same mistakes they did, because my parents became Christians in their early mid-20s. So they kind of like got married, started a family, and became Christians all around the same time. So their youth was pretty wild, so they wanted to make sure that we would not get a taste of that. So I had a lot of rules growing up, and unfortunately, I feel like I encountered a lot of religion growing up, and it wasn't out of like a bad heart, but it was more like out of the heart to protect me from the world. So I knew that there was a standard I am supposed to measure up to all of the time. And as a kid, you don't feel it as much, but once you become a teenager and there like become more and more temptations from the world, from the peers, whatever, you suddenly realize, oh, I'm not measuring up to the standard my parents expect me to be, or like maybe even the church members, considering that you're a PK, expect you to be. So I feel like going around teenage years is when I started to pretend to be someone better than I actually thought I was. And there was like this kind of facade going on where I'm like, oh, I know I'm supposed to go to church every Sunday and be good. But when it comes to like going back to the school, I'd be more like everybody else, like I don't want to stand out. So that was me like growing up.
What was one of your favorite like childhood memories growing up?
As corny as it sounds, I feel like I really liked Sunday afternoons after church. It used to be like our family time, so we would always... You have to suffer first a little bit because you have to wait for your parents to be the last one to get out of the church and close everything and arrange everything. But once you're done, we'll usually go eat out somewhere or just have fun as a family. Yeah, so Sunday afternoons were my favorite childhood memory just because it would always be a family day for us. So I used to love it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember when you first moved in and I started asking you about your family and stuff. And I found out that you lost your father as a teen. And I was like, oh, God. Yeah, of course you do this. Because at the time, my father was dying. Yeah. And he ended up dying, I guess, was 2 years later. Mm-hmm. But he had early onset Alzheimer's and was walking through that. And I'm like, oh, of course, God makes someone move in who has walked through this before. But I would love for you to just walk us through what that was like.
Yeah. First, I remember that morning when we were talking. I feel like I moved in on Sunday or something. Mm-hmm. No, it was Wednesday, and you had Wednesday services. So I went to bed before I actually met you. Mm-hmm. And then next morning, you made crepes for me, which was so sweet. And we had breakfast, and you're asking me about my life, and I'm telling you, like, yeah, like my family story, like my dad. And then you start crying all of a sudden, and I was like, okay, like, I didn't know you were so compassionate. And then later I found out about your dad, but yeah, I remember that morning. Yeah, so I lost my father at the age of 18. He was, I'm not sure if he was like actually clinically diagnosed with hepatitis C at that point, but the symptoms started to appear when I was 14. So for 4 years, I used to live with a dad who would get worse and then would get better, get worse and then would get better. And my dad, he was like a very radical Christian. Like, he was for God 100%, and he believed in a God who heals. And he believed for radical things all of his life, like, as you know, from things like, I remember he had cavities in his teeth at some point. Oh no, not cavities, but he actually was missing a tooth, and he would always tell me, like, Liza, one day God will like make me grow a new tooth there. So that's the kind of faith I grew up around. So when he said that God will heal him, I'm like, sure, you know, God will do it. So I remember I wasn't too concerned that he was not like seeking medical help at that point. But there would be good times, and there would be harder times. There would be months when he would spend in bed and just like get out for only important stuff, and then would be days when he is doing amazing. But it was 2017 when he got in way worse, and I feel like I was in denial up until the moment he actually got hospitalized, which was 2 weeks prior to him actually dying. And yeah, he just lost his consciousness for a second, and when he came back to it, he was not in his right mind. And we called 911, and he got carried out of our apartment, and I feel like was the first time that it actually hit me. My father might die. And it was a scary thought, but at the same time, it was still, but no, like, God can heal him, you know, and like, God can heal him. So for 2 weeks, I've been a mother to my 2 younger siblings, while the rest of my family, my 2 older siblings and my mother, they would tend to my father at the hospital.
Yeah. So I know what were the ages of your 2 younger siblings? Because they were young.
Yeah, so it was 2017. My youngest brother was 4, and my younger sister, she was 9. So yeah, that was their age, and I just turned 18. So I've been taking care of them, and we were just like trying to keep our hopes up. And I feel like, again, like, me not being exposed to the hospital, where like my mother made a decision that me and my younger siblings would not see my dad in that state that he was, just to like not traumatize us. I feel like not being exposed to that kind of like influenced my denial even more, you know, where I'm like, you don't actually see how bad things are, so you're like, maybe things will still be good. Then he did pass on Christmas Eve, and I feel like even at that point I was still in denial, to be honest. Not as much as denial as much there was still faith in the room. There was still faith in the family. There was still faith in the church. People would pray for resurrection. People would still hope for the best. And because that's what my dad, you know, like, believed to the last point. I remember like hearing the stories that, you know, like, he would make plans even like on a deathbed, literally, oh, like, you have to get me this or you have to get me that, you know, like, for the time I'll get discharged from the hospital. So I feel like having him with that faith build up the faith in us. But he didn't come back to life, and suddenly we had to face the reality of not having a father and being a family of 5 kids. It's been hard, and I feel like, again, my protective mechanism is to keep myself busy, so I kept on taking care of my younger siblings. My mom obviously, you know, like, fell apart pretty quickly, and I was just there making sure people have food in the house or the house is clean or something like that. And I was just like keeping myself busy for a while, and it would keep my mind occupied from thinking about what just had happened. And as I said before, starting like in my early teens, I felt like I was pretending to be good rather than knowing that I'm good. So I used to love God, don't get me wrong. Like, I knew that God is good, I know that God loves me, but at the same time, I never felt like I'm good enough as I am. So I feel like my Christianity was not as strong at that point, and not because I didn't believe in God, but because I didn't understand what cross really meant and how it affected me in my life. So when my dad passed away, the biggest, like the biggest believer I knew in my life, the person who influenced my faith 100%, the person who I've been trying to please and, like perform almost for my father all of my life, he's suddenly not there. And I remember the thought that used to give me anxiety and really keep me up at night and used to go to panic attacks is, how come good God would take away my father? Like, how come a God, who's supposed to know my heart and and he's supposed to know how much my dad used to mean to me, how would he take away my father? And I feel like I could not wrap my head around that idea for such a long time, where I'm like, it just doesn't make sense, because like I grew up with the idea that God is good, but my life was not good. So how come those two things coexist at the same time? So I feel like for a whole year after my dad passed, I was just slowly falling apart. I could not understand how I can be in the same room on a church service where people would, like praise and give glory to God, and I'd be just on my knees crying, and how come God can be with them and with me at the same time? Like, I'm like, somebody's wrong in this room, and I guess this is me because I'm the only one crying. So I feel like I would not come to deny my faith or anything like that, but I would not understand, and I would try to pray, but I sincerely couldn't. Instead, like, just the idea of God, who is supposed to be good, in my life that was evidently not good. How could it be at the same time? So, and the other thing, as I said, I was trying to pretend to be good, but I wasn't good. So throughout all my teen years, I used to hide, like any issues that I had in my life, like whether it's sin, whether it's problems in school, I would just not open up because I didn't want to fit into the idea that I'm not good, and I didn't want people to know that I'm not as good as I seem to be. So when my issues became more pressing, when I started to have like anxiety, panic attacks, and all this stuff, I still did not open up to people. Like, nobody knew what I was going through. I'm sure my family could tell that something is up, but I did not have a habit of opening up to anybody, not my family, not my friends. So I would just fall apart behind the closed doors of my room and try to stay alive. And I remember in October, there were visitors to my church from England. They used to know my father pretty well. And they would just pray over my family, and, like, they would take, like, each one of us, like, one by one, and they would just, like, speak words of life and prophesy over us. And when it came to me, I remember they were saying how, I didn't remember exactly the words, I have it recorded somewhere, but it's something about just, like, a very life-giving message, I would say, like, oh, like, things will be great, and all that burden that you're carrying, like, it will just, like, go away, and like, so many, like, good prophetic words. And I remember it was around the time that I actually started to think about taking my own life. So I remember, like, weeping as they were crying for me, but not because I was touched by the Holy Spirit, but because I'm like, no, you gotta be wrong, because, like, I'm actually thinking about killing myself. Can I even say that on a podcast? And they're saying something about life. So I feel like it actually gotten worse after that. Coming October, November, early December, it's just everything intensified. I was just like hiding a lot, having sin cycles, just getting mentally anywhere, than staying alone with my thoughts and thinking about my life. So for a couple of months, I would entertain the ideas of taking my life. I would literally go to the bridges, and thinking about what if. And then when it was around my father's death anniversary, it came to the point where I realized that a lot of my issues would come to the surface, because back then I was a college student, and I was skipping a lot of classes at that point because I'm like, that was not part of my agenda anymore. and I just knew that there were like a couple of issues that were going on in my life, and I understood that they would come to the surface really soon. And I was faced with the issue, will I let those problems come to surface and like the people around me to find out about it and see that I'm not perfect, see that I'm not good, see that I'm not the person I was trying to pretend to be. I'm actually taking my life and not dealing with all of this. I remember I was sitting on the kitchen floor, shaking, thinking about this, like, am I gonna talk to my family? Am I gonna open up? Am I gonna tell them what I'm going through? Or am I just done? And thankfully, I chose opening up to my family. And I feel like it wasn't as much like what I shared or like things that I said, because I remember more weeping than talking, to be honest, at that point. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it was that moment of surrender when I'm just like, I finally admitted I cannot do it by myself, and I needed people, I needed God at that moment. And that was the moment where it was my altar call, so to speak, because like it wasn't in church, it wasn't something super pretty. And I feel like in the moment, it didn't even feel like I needed God as much as I needed my family and as much as I needed to surrender. But it was exactly the moment when God truly came into my life and completely transformed me and completely changed me. And suddenly the faith became actually mine, like the faith of my father became mine, and the relationship with the God that everybody used to talk about, it suddenly made sense. So
I always love that when there's horrible stuff going on, that the verse in Romans rings true, that God works all things together for the good. Mm-hmm. I saw God completely radically transform one of my siblings' lives by the side of my dad's deathbed. Yeah. And hearing like that, how God used something to lead something horrible to lead you to that personal conviction and surrender to Christ. Yeah. It is beautiful, even though our dad's deaths weren't necessarily, there's sickness and stuff. It wasn't good. Yeah. But God used it for good, which I love how God does that, and he can use that. What would you just say to someone who is currently struggling with suicidal thoughts?
Honestly, first, get help. Like, don't go through this alone. I would say you need people. Like, there's got to be... one thing that I learned through that whole process is that there's got to be at least one person in my life who knows everything that I'm going through, no matter how dark or ugly things are. But I just cannot sit and let those thoughts eat me anymore. Because I feel like it's in the darkness that, like, Satan has actually power. But once he brings things to life, you take away the part of his power. And I feel like that whole, like, hiding and, like, it's, like, only, like, you. That's where, again, like, the Satan has the power. But there's been so many times in my life where I'm just, like, it just took me, like, confess. It just took me to, like, admit. Not, again, like, it's not something... like when you have suicidal thoughts, like, it's not like you want to have them, like they're just there, but you're so ashamed to have them that you're just like, you don't want to talk about it. But just bringing those things to life, that's where, like, you take away the power back to you and back to Christ. So first and foremost, just tell anybody. Choose one person and it will get better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is, like, so true. Just, like, even if it's not suicidal thoughts, if it's struggling with sin or temptation, like, telling someone, I think the enemy has this power when it's kept in the dark. Yeah. They have so much sway on being able to, you're already in an emotionally compromised situation, so they have so much power to just sway you wherever they want you to go. But when you bring stuff to the light, it is so powerful to do that. So, what year did your dad die?
It was 2017.
2017. Let's fast forward a couple years, because I always hated, like, when there were like Ukrainians came over and you guys had walked through so much. And I hear like your lives before this and I'm like, this is not fair. You went through so much already in your life. Why do you have to go through this as well? Yeah. So I would just like to state I don't think it's fair. Life isn't fair, but it's just So walk us through the war. You know, like
easy.
Yeah, nice little easy subject. What was your life like leading up to the war, like prior?
Yeah, so between my dad's passing and the war starting was right about 4 years, a little bit more than that, and I just became on fire Christian. You know, I was a youth leader in my church, and we would do camps and we would do like youth gatherings. It was so powerful, and you know, like, you don't want to take the credit, but I feel like I was the forerunner definitely in my church where I suddenly broke like those like shame cycles that people had, where you have to be good in church, you have to pretend that you're good. So I feel like honestly like a small revival started in my church where I would just publicly admit, you know, like to like things that I'm struggling with. And I'm like, I'm here, you know, like I'm a PK, I'm whatever, I'm a youth leader, and I'm not perfect, and it's okay. And like I'm trying to get better. I'm like, I am accountable, like, but I'm not perfect, and you don't have to be. And I felt like that gave the freedom for others to step forward and, you know, like confess their stuff and into their weaknesses. And that's where it just really, the power of God came into the room and transformed so many lives. So that's been going on in my church for a while before the war started. But, I don't remember the years, but I feel like it was 2021 that I got offered an amazing job in life just like became a little bit more busy, and I used to work for the United States, by the way, when I was back in Ukraine. Yeah. But so my hours would shift a bit, and I was not as involved in the church as I would love to be anymore. And yeah, and that definitely affected my walk with Christ, unfortunately, at some point. Again, I was still accountable, and I would still admit the stuff that was going in my life. But I feel like I did have a little bit setback right before the war. But I was trying to get back on like that track and be more involved in the church and be more involved in my relationship with God again. But things were still like good. I feel like my family was doing better. Like my mom was doing better. My siblings was doing better. We were just like all, you know, like finding a new rhythm. And then coming February 2022, that's where the war started. And we all used to live in the same apartment still. My whole family, we all lived together. And I remember the day before the war started, I was at work in my office, and I was talking with my colleagues about the rumors of war, because honestly the rumors of war have been in Ukraine for such a long time. So at some point you just stop taking it seriously, you know, because the rumors were there for so long. You're like,
yeah, nothing ever happened.
Yeah, it would never happen. And again, like the day before, we were talking with my colleagues about it, and I was saying, like, there's no way, like, people in 21st century in the civilized society would start an actual war. And then I go home, I go to bed, and I wake up. I think it was 5 a.m.-ish, maybe a little bit later. And my mom wakes me up saying, get up, the war has started, you need to pack. Oh. Yeah, and then you know, like there are so many small decisions and small things that are going through your head. We had one car as a family. It was a pretty seven seats in the car. But still, you know, like there's only limited space in a trunk.
I have been in this car. I felt pretty cool.
Oh yes, you've been
in this car, not in Ukraine.
Yes.
It was cool. I was just at a little solo Europe trip, like a couple months after you moved in, and some of your family moved to Germany.
Yeah.
And they drove there in the car.
Yeah.
And I happened to be going within an hour of them, so I went and visited them and stayed with them for a day or two, and I got a ride in the car. But anyway.
Yeah, that's the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, my family was 7 people, again, because my brother got married. So there was limited space in the trunk. And you don't know how long you're picking for, you know, like, but even if you wanted to overpack, you cannot. So I think I ended up just like with the backpack and a purse. And It was really hectic. I feel like everybody was like taking care of little things, and I unfortunately left my laptop the day before at my office building, my workplace. And I knew I'm leaving and I need my laptop and I cannot work without the laptop. And I was stressing out about it. And it was like kind of like all the way across town. But I knew I couldn't leave without it. And thankfully, my sister-in-law, God bless her, she said, I'll go with you. So it was so much panic in the city, I remember. And but some people were still not stressed about it. And it was like a funny mix where, especially, I feel like the older people would not just take it seriously at all, and I would see them like going back to work, you know, but while others are like packing and driving crazy across town because everybody's scared. But yeah, my sister-in-law and I, we got to my office building, quickly packed my laptop, came back. My sister was fueling the car. My brother was handling documents. Then we went to ATM, you know, like to get cash because you don't know, maybe like the cards will stop working and stuff. So there was definitely a lot of panic in the city, but we all got together maybe 2 hours later when we all handled business and packed. And I remember like the meeting point was a little bit like across, not exactly the city limits, but a little bit away from the danger. So when we were leaving our apartment building, this is very unlike me. Again, by my story, you can tell that I am the person who would be the first one in denial. I would be the first person who would be like, no, like this is not happening. But for the first time in my life, I was leaving my house and I was weeping because I knew I was not coming back. I cannot explain it still, but I would like walk the streets that I used to walk from like the age of probably 6 or 7 years old. That's when we moved in. And I just suddenly realized, like, the same streets that I used to walk to school or to church or anywhere, like, I am now escaping the literal war, and I don't think I'm ever coming back. So that was interesting. I don't know if that's the right word. And then we just got together with my family, and there were, like, some extended family in town as well. And again, there was so much confusion in the room. My aunt, for example, she would still not believe the imminent danger that was happening, and she didn't want to leave the town no matter how much we offered. Same would go to my grandparents. But I remember I was the one in the room who was like, let's just go. I said, let's go anywhere, but like let's not stay here. Because in my head, like I knew that we were way too close to Russian border. Like we don't know how fast the troops will move. So after some conversations, we left town and we all got in the car together and we drove heading west. We did not have a plan necessarily. I feel like for sure like my mom and my sister and a friend would try to make some kind of arrangements, but we didn't know where we could stay, if there is a place to stay. But we just decided to head west and decide what's gonna happen. And again, very unlike me, sit in the very big seat of the car and just crying because again, I don't know how, like it's literally God. But I was just aware of what the war meant, you know, like for my country and for my land. I was literally weeping for the land and for the ground that we were driving on, because I'm like it's gonna be soaked in blood, you know, like there's gonna be people that's gonna die, and there's gonna be, you know, like women and children that are gonna die and they're gonna be raped, and I'm not the person who would usually think about stuff like that. So I feel like God just like allowed me to grieve early on and not let me live in denial for as long as I usually would. And our first stop was somewhere in central Ukraine, to be honest. I don't even remember the name of the town. It was such a random place. I think it was literally a rehab center that somebody from my church knew, like the head of this rehab, and they had a few bunk beds that were available. So we drove there in the middle of the night, not knowing where we are, what's happening, and you're just walking in the room full of random people. And we just spent there the night, and we woke up as early as possible, and we kept driving. My older sister was the only one who could drive at that point, so she drove all the way from Kharkiv to Chernivtsi. That's where we ended up. I feel like it's close to like 24-hour drive. It's maybe a little bit less, but we drove for 2 days straight. Yeah, and then by the grace of God, we found a person who my parents used to know, like maybe like 15 years prior. They used to be friends, and there was a single lady who gave up her apartment for us, but it was a 2-bedroom apartment, and we stayed there, the group of 8 people, for I think a little bit over a month or so. Yeah, and I remember the first night we got there, and the lady, that she was so sweet, she cooked us, like a meal, and it was like probably like a borscht or Ukrainian soup or whatever. But I remember as well, like just quite a few of us were just like crying at the dinner table because we finally stopped running. And again, like we still didn't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, what to expect, but it was like the first moment where like, oh, we have like a warm meal and a roof over our head for the night. But that's the city where I stayed for another month, and it was a nice place. It was pretty far off, very far from the war, and it was surrounded by mountains, so we felt there pretty safe, although even there used to be like some planes, and like you would hear the sirens going off. We're actually really blessed to stay in that city, and I used to come to that city for summer camps when I was a teenager, so I knew my way around it, and thankfully my job had an office there, so I would leave early in the morning, and I would go in the office, and it would be my place of refuge. Again, keeping myself busy, I'm like, I'll keep working. I grab that laptop so I can keep working. That really helped, like mentally it was easier. But as you can imagine, there was a huge flood of refugees coming from the east and central Ukraine all to the west, like as much to Europe as possible and as far away from Russian border as possible. And history lesson. In the east of Ukraine, and honestly, like east and central Ukraine, people used to speak Russian primarily, whereas in the west, people would speak Ukrainian. I grew up almost trilingual. I spoke like in Ukraine, in my school, everything would be in Ukrainian, but at home I would speak Russian. So that would be usually how it is. But again, like Russian would be my first language. And not only mine, but millions and millions of other people. So when all of the refugees flooded the west of Ukraine, people naturally got scared because at that point, the Western Ukraine haven't seen the real enemy, so to speak. So they didn't know who they were supposed to be afraid of. And all they know is that there are a lot of people coming in and they all speak the language of the enemy. So people were scared and they didn't know how to behave. So I was personally being accused of being a Russian spy because I was working in the office building with my laptop and I spoke Russian, and there were like a couple of other people from my workplace that again like spoke Russian, and basically there were other tenants in the building who one day came into our office accusing us of being Russian spies and that we're selling the information to Russians on our laptops. And because of us, their building would get bombed or something like that. Or you can imagine, like you being a refugee from Kharkiv, from the place that actually got bombed. And at that point, that city didn't see any bombs. And like people accuse you of being a Russian spy and you're like, oh. So it was hard. Like you could understand it, but basically my place of work, they decided to stop the lease of that office building for that point because they were not ready to deal with that, with all the other fires that were happening at work, as you can imagine. So I stopped having the place where I could work, and the apartment where we used to live, because of stress, I feel like my body was not doing well, and there were like a lot of allergies going on in my body, and particularly I was very allergic to like the dust in the furniture. So I would literally get sick as soon as I get home. So yeah, the day that they kicked me out of the office, it was probably like end of the week. I understood that I cannot work from home and I cannot work anywhere else. And and I just decided I think it's time for me to move on at the age of 22. At that point, somebody reached out to my family. They are friends of my sister-in-law. A family from Switzerland offered to host anyone from my family, if we needed a place to stay. And I prayed about it, and I decided that it's gonna be me. And that's when I decided to move to Switzerland. The first one in my family. My brother, again, history lesson. My brother, how old was he? It doesn't matter how old was he, but he was somewhere in between 18 and 65, where if you're a male of this age, you cannot cross the border when the war has started, because
unless you have a certain amount of kids.
Yes, unless you have 3 kids or more, you cannot leave the country, because in case they need you for military purposes. Although he was not serving in the army, but he could not leave the country, so he would stay with my sister-in-law, and then would leave me, my 3 other siblings, and my mom. And basically my mom was a little bit too overwhelmed, to think about moving and the kids and everything, not knowing the language. I didn't know the language of the country I was going to either when I was 22, so I was a little bit less scared. So the first one in my family who said that I'm leaving, and it was hard, you don't know how long you're saying goodbye to your family. You don't know anything, but I just knew that I could not handle being nor physically nor emotionally in that place. So I moved to Switzerland.
Yeah. What did you think of Switzerland?
Oh, it was so funny. I feel like the summer before, I was actually dreaming about going to Switzerland. I was like, it would be so great. Like, the pictures are so amazing. I'm sure the country is going to be great.
Yeah.
Honestly, Switzerland as beautiful as you would see all the pictures on the internet. So if you have the opportunity to travel there, go. It's definitely worth it. I mean, again, it was hard to travel, even again, just not understanding where are you going, what's happening. I remember even at border control stuff, where you have to explain you're a Ukrainian refugee and you don't know how long you're gonna stay in that country, and you don't know anything, so you'd have to negotiate. And I remember even back then, I was already translating for some other Ukrainian refugees at border control, trying to explain the officers what's happening and all of that. But I got to the house in Switzerland, and I stayed with a lovely family, Philippe, Marie, and Jassant. I want to say Bonsoir, but I probably butchered their last name. I lived in a more rural area, but it was so pretty. I lived in the valley. I lived in a French-speaking part, and I did not know any French. Again, my English was pretty fluent. And I was able to get around the city, to get around country, but you cannot build any meaningful relationships with people around you. The family that I stayed with, there was a girl that was my age-ish. She spoke pretty good English, but at the same time, she was young, she was building her life, she had school and all of that, so I didn't see her a lot. And most of the time I would spend with her parents, who did not speak English, and I would not speak French, so I would communicate through Google Translate at best.
God bless Google Translate.
Yeah, for sure. But they were lovely people, and when I think about it, I have the most compassion for my mom, who had to walk me through my teenage years, and I was not an easy child. I have the most compassion for this family, because honestly, I feel like these are the people that had to love me at my worst, emotionally, and also and we didn't speak the same language, so I can only imagine how hard it was for them, to have a kid separated from her family, or a refugee, nobody's prepared them for that either.
Yeah.
And I was closed off, so I feel like it was not an easy time for neither of us. But yeah, I would still go to church, French-speaking church. Did not understand a single word, but again, the PK, I don't know how not to go to church. So I feel like the Switzerland, it was good for me safety wise, but and then I lived again like I don't want to say village, but like it's a very quiet place, like not city,
Small
no
little
nothing.
town.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is there were like not a lot of things that would trigger me, but even there, you know, even there, like I remember like lying in bed and then you would hear like again the most quiet train go off and you would still, you know, like get that like triggering feeling where like, oh, like did the work out here as well, you know. And you're like would just lay in bed and like think of the escape plans, you know, like the exit or like how to get to the basement, you know, like real quick. So even there it took me some time to calm down and
Works through some PTSD.
yes. But yeah, but Switzerland was for me a lot of controversy. It was the most beautiful country. It was the most beautiful food, and I knew that the people around me were great, but I was not doing well. I was really not doing well, and yeah, and I feel like I naturally just went back to, you know, like sin cycles or whatever. I feel like in Switzerland I encountered the most escapism. Where I would do everything and anything to yet again not think about what's happening with my country, with my family, and with my future, because I did not have answers to any of that. So I would work, I would go to the gym, and I would sin. That would be three things that I would do on a regular basis just to not think about anything as much as I can. Okay, no, I would actually still pray. That again, one thing that taught me through that experience of losing my father is that God is with me all the time, and he's never like turning his face away from me. And I know that he saw me, and you know, like he saw me in my sin, he saw me like everywhere. So I knew there's no point in hiding anymore. But at the same time, I knew that I'm not gonna stop sin right now. Like I just cannot. Like that was like my only mental escape. That would be like my only place where I'm like, I don't have to think about it, like I don't have to face the reality. So I would still pray to God, and I would have very sincere conversations with him, you know, like about life, about things, but at the same time, like I wish I could stop sinning, but I know I cannot. So that's the place where I was for quite a while.
So you're in this place of processing a ton of trauma and grief of losing the life that you've known for so long, trying to connect with people, but you can't really connect with people because you don't really speak the language. They don't speak your language. There's so much going on in your life just relationally with God and sin. What was the turning point for you?
I feel like there was a moment, I will not go into details because we're online, but there was a moment where sin-wise, I just knew I hit my rock bottom. I'm just like, okay, like this is as low as I can go in these circumstances, and I just desperately need help. And again, and as I said, like I was not in a place of rebellion against God. Like I really wasn't. Like it's not like I'm trying to sin because I'm mad. I actually had a lot of faith towards like no, God, you know, like when it came to my father's death, I didn't expect anything good out of it. Like I actually expected it to kill me, but God turned it for good for my life and my family's life and my church's life. So my faith level was actually good. I just didn't know how to handle the in-between process. You know, like I know it's got to be good because this is God's nature, but I just didn't know how to navigate the waiting season. And yeah, so when I hit my rock bottom, I'm like, okay, I need to get out of the year. Like emotionally, like I was not seeking a way out of Switzerland necessarily, but once I was on my prayer walk in the vineyard, I felt like Jesus. It was so easy. It was literally in my backyard, like just like miles and miles of vineyards. And I just started praying to God, and I said, okay, Jesus, I need help. I cannot get better here, but I want to get better. And I said, you either give me a supernatural desire to learn French, because I tried and it's hard. I said, or leave me out of here. And because I was so hurt by, you know, the decisions that I made on my own, and I had like no trust or like safety in my own decisions, I said, I will not try to make my own way out of Switzerland. I need to know that it's you leading me someplace else, that you are providing the way. So I said, as a sign, I have 3 requirements to you, God. I said, I will not look for the option to get out of this country. Somebody should approach me. Then I said that I know that all the legal stuff is super hard, so I'll need help with applying for visas or whatever I would need to do. And third, I just said, like, I need not like everything to be provided for, but kind of like that, where like I need stuff to be provided for me, and where like I just need to show up, because that's all I had in me. Like I just could show up, and that's it. So I just threw it out there. I said that to God, and I feel like honestly not a lot of time has passed when somebody texts me from my church back in Ukraine. It was a girl my age. We grew up together. We're not super close, but like we're still good acquaintances. And she texts me and she's saying, hey, like, like she'd check, like how I'm doing. I think she used to be back in, it might have been Belgium or Sweden at that point. She just texted, and she asked me, what do you think about coming to the United States? I was like, well, theoretically, I'm not against the idea. Practically, I'm not trying to go to the United States. And then she proceeds to tell me about a guy that we both know. He used to be a youth leader in my church for a while. That is in connection with this church in Tennessee. And this church is trying to help Ukrainians and bring them over from Europe, Ukraine, wherever they're at, and help them start a new life in America. And she said, would you be interested in finding out more about it? And I was like, yeah. To find out that, again, somebody approached me first. Later, as we got to talk, I found out that this church has a lawyer who would do all of my paperwork.
We love him.
Shout out to Joel.
We love Joel. Thank you, Joel.
And third, that they would pay for my tickets, and they would provide me with a host phone, and, just cover as much expenses as they can, like to help me get on my feet. And I was like, check. So immediately, like, as we had that conversation, it really literally happened overnight. I'm like, wow, this is God. I cannot make this up. This is God. And I immediately contacted my family and I said, I think I'm going to States. So we started to have more and more conversations and find out about it, and I felt like that really gave me life again, where I'm like, wow, God sees me, like God cares, God, like I literally gave him the requirements, like who am I, in what place am I to give him, like the requirements to fulfill, but he did that.
It's so beautiful. I hadn't heard like the details of that part of the story. Obviously, I know half of it. But like in your lowest of lows, in your sin, in your like darkest time, you went to God and you gave him requirements, and he still
middle child.
And he still showed up and loved you, and like pursued you. And I think when we're in that area, we can so easily think that we're not worth being loved or pursued, and that our sin, our pain is just kind of this barrier between us and God of like, well, he can't get through it because what we have done. But like, here's some proof that even then he still was radically loving and chasing after you.
Interestingly enough, where yes, it was the depiction of his love for me, but at the same time it felt like a life buoy, where I'm like God is throwing me a life jacket. So I was celebrating. No, don't get me wrong. Like I was celebrating everything that has happened, and like I knew that it was God, and I had no idea where I'm coming, guys. Like Tri-Cities, Tennessee, like said nothing to me before.
No public transportation.
No, I remember, like I only knew like Celebration Church. So, and Celebration Church is registered in Blountville, and I'm like, I Googled Blountville, and it's literally a forest, If you go on Google and you just put Blountville, Tennessee, it shows nothing but trees. And I was like, oh, where am I going? But at the same time, like it's gotta be God. So I had no idea where I'm going. I don't know. I had no idea what to expect. And the Ukrainians who came before me, they were like really confused at that point as well, because like they had no cars, they spoke no language, so like they were not portraying any better idea of Tri-Cities, Tennessee.
Yeah, because all the Ukrainians that we've brought over are pretty much also from Kharkiv for the most part. And in Kharkiv, it's a city of a couple million with amazing public transportation.
Yeah.
No one knew how to drive, pretty much.
Yes.
And the few that did know how to drive couldn't get driver's license because they had to learn enough English in order to get their permit, like take the test, because it's only in English. I think some of them kind of figured out that if they go to Florida first, there's somewhere in Florida where you can take it in Russia. Like we're trying to like figure it all out, but that was the issue that everyone had.
Yeah, it was still like early on, like people did not get adjusted to life in America, obviously. So my mom was a little bit worried about me going here, but I said, Mom, and it's God. Mom, it's God, and she's like, okay, if it's God, then you can go. So yet again, I said goodbye to my family. I had a chance to come visit my brother back in Ukraine right before I left, so that was beautiful.
I think at this point, your mom and 3 of your siblings had moved to Germany.
Yes, thank you for reminding that. Keeping up, like with my life. Because of some legal things and like some practical issues, we could not live in the same country. Like I could not live with my mom and my other siblings. They were in Germany and I was in Switzerland for a while. They actually moved only like maybe a month or two after I moved to Switzerland, because they saw me that I'm okay in Switzerland, like I don't know the language, but the people are trying to help us, everything is okay. So I feel like me going there first gave them the courage to follow. And so I visited my family in Ukraine, I visited my family in Germany, I said goodbyes, and I got on a plane to go to the United States. And going back to that conversation about God pursuing us with love, again, those 3 requirements, they already meant the world for me. Like God did that, and I'm like, wow, like how amazing His love is for me. Again, like at my lowest, He did all of that. And then I come here, and He keeps on loving me. and I feel like that where it broke me, because Him fulfilling those 3 requirements felt like, again, like the life jacket. Like I knew I was in trouble and I know I cannot get out by myself. So I'm like God, like give me something, like help me get out of here. But I didn't expect for Him, like to lavish His love on me from that point on, because I messed up. Like I do not deserve that amount of love. But I love our story because I feel like you were the answer to my prayers and I was the answer to yours in some ways. Like you said, you wanted a Ukrainian who spoke a good English, and here I am. And I remember I was praying to live with someone my age-ish, which we are, and with someone who'd be involved in church so that I would get assimilated with church like as fast as possible, because I was craving community at that point, because for half a year I lived with no community whatsoever. So I'm just like, just give me God loving people, please. And so here I come. You're my age and you work for church. So I feel like it started like I started to see more and more God showing up for me in the small things that were not the requirements. It was just like the desires of my heart. And some of them I didn't, like I wouldn't even pray out loud, like it would be like more like nice to have, like, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful kind of thing. But you wouldn't even like, God, ask for this, because I'm like, okay, I'm in no position to ask anymore. Like you gave me a life jacket, I'm fine now. And I felt like I still had like to deserve my way out of it. But God kept lavishing me with His love as I was here, with living with you and the community and the people, and the way I feel like how radically people chose to love me. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, there's such a core group of people at Celebration who have invested so much into every single Ukrainian who has come. And the amount that they have just so selflessly loved all of you guys, it has been so beautiful for me to just watch, like, this group of people. And just, I mean, I won't go through and name all the names, but, like, there's a nice little list of people who have just given so much. And just being able to watch and see how much you guys have been able to connect with those people, and just, oh, it's been beautiful.
I know. No, I've been a great princess passenger, for quite a while. Because I didn't know how to drive either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just when people would come and teach me how to drive, and like so many like things where I'm just like, you have other things to do with your life, but you choose to come and like love on me and show up for me in so many different ways. That was incredible.
Do you remember what I did when you got your permit and I took you driving in the church parking lot over there?
With a helmet on? Yes. I still have the picture.
I brought a helmet, more a helmet.
Yeah. I think it was literally my first time behind the wheel. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, I think I'd taken you to our church parking lot like before you got your permit. I'm like, I'm just going to have you drive one loop just so you can say you've driven. But this was like the first real time of you learning how to drive.
I know. And isn't it crazy that I went from there, literally, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I think, to driving cross country like 4 times.
Yeah, how many times have you driven back and forth from California?
I mean, solo 3 times, right? No,
Okay.
2 times.
What? I drove out with you to California, and I flew home, and then you drove back by yourself, so that's back and forth. That's 2 times across country, and then you went back and you've come back. So it's been 4 times.
Yeah, and 3 of them by myself.
Yeah, and you're going, you're about to go
And I
back
learned
again.
how to drive here.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and you've not been any car wrecks? Okay, good. Like, you hiding anything from me? Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And you've seen more of America than a lot of Tennesseans.
To be fair, yes, but to be fair, like, I drive more or less the same route,
Yeah.
back and forth.
You've done the northern route and the southern route, so I mean.
True.
So what's your favorite state? Okay, beauty-wise. Just nature-wise.
I still think I would say it's somewhere. I like California, Utah, and Colorado. That would be my top 3. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. I love beautiful mountains, and Tennessee has mountains as well, but those are a little bit of a different mountains.
Yeah.
back there.
Once you go Midwest and West, your definition of a mountain changes.
Yeah.
Expands.
Yeah, so I like the coast, and I feel like it's just, those are the states that offer you the variety.
Yeah.
It's one state, but it can look so differently, so I just love that.
Yeah, I personally think California is the most beautiful state I've been to, just because it's a very big state, so you have so much variety.
Yeah.
You have desert, you have rainforest, you have crazy mountains, you have, Would I want to live in California? Probably not, but I love visiting California. Yeah. So America is kind of a safe haven, place of healing for you. There's one aspect of your healing process that I would like to talk through.
Let's go.
Is walking in and truly forgiving Russia. Mm-hmm. Because I think, although a lot of us might not have a similar experience of a nation destroying your homeland and killing people you know and all that encompasses, but there are lots of situations where every single one of us have areas where we need to forgive. Yeah. So what was the journey like for you of truly learning to forgive?
Well, it took me a while. I feel like the process started almost a year after I went to the United States, so I already settled in, took care of my basic needs. Mm-hmm. And by that point, I moved to California to do the school of ministry there. And that's where God really started to work in my heart. I feel like, again, the journey how I got there is crazy in itself. But really, I dedicated a year to getting better, basically, to get better in my relationship with God, to get better mentally, and, just honestly, just opening yourself up for whatever God has for you. So I feel like going with that, again, surrendered heart, where I don't know what to expect, but I know God has called me here, really helped the process. But even in that point, I cannot say that forgiving Russians was ever in my agenda. And not because I had such a hard heart, but in all the sincerity, I thought, why would we talk about forgiveness when the war is still there? For me, it almost felt like you know, like let's say you go through domestic violence and you live with an abusive husband and he hit you yesterday, he's gonna hit you today and he's gonna hit you tomorrow. And why would you forgive him today, you know, if you know it's gonna happen again and again and again? So in my heart of hearts, I'm like, God, we'll talk forgiveness once the war is gonna be done. So I sincerely had no agenda whatsoever to talk about forgiveness while the war was still out there. And then I come to school, and God starts with me, because you are the main issue in your life. You know?
Yeah.
No, and I feel like the first month God was just showing his intense love for me, and healing, like, again, a lot of parts of my heart where I thought I'm just gonna have to live with him, you know, like, again, even just remembering of those, like, low points in Switzerland or some others in my life where I'm like, I know it's part of my history and I know it's covered by the blood, but, you know, like, it's still, like, an ugly page in my history. And then God just really transformed my heart in those moments, and he showed me how intense his love is for me. You know, it's just this, you know, like, no explanation, you know, like, no requirements. He just loved me. So when it came to forgiveness of Russians, I already was in a place where I was aware how strong God's love is for me. And I think it was the second month of my school, and we were still not quite on regular schedule, and we would have a choice to attend regular seminars, so to speak. And you would just have a selection for, like, a time slot, maybe, like, you can choose 1 of 4 or something. And I would always pray about it, like, oh, like, which one should I choose? Because I didn't know any of the speakers at that point, so to me, it all looked the same. And I remember for one time slot, I felt like God wanted me to go on the forgiveness seminar. And I was like, okay. I was like, maybe I need to forgive my father more.
Yeah.
You know, going into that seminar, I still had no intentions of forgiving Russians. I walk in there, and there is a whiteboard in the middle of the classroom, and there was a quote there. The difference between forgiveness and unforgiveness lies in the matter of whose blood brings you peace, whether it's the blood of your enemy or the blood of your Lord Jesus Christ. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, I don't think anybody else in the room can relate to that quote as much as I do. Because, again, at that point, you know, the war is so active and everybody's so politically charged, and people would sincerely rejoice, you know, like, in the blood shedding of, you know, like, the others. You know, like, you would be happy if, like, more Russians would die than Ukrainians today, kind of thing. So that hit me hard right away, and I was like, okay, this is going to be an interesting class. And it felt like I literally wept through the whole hour and a half, where the speakers would just, you know, like, share on their heart about their journey of forgiveness and different things, and how I love that one of them brought up the idea that, again, your unforgiveness can be justified. You know, like, you can have, like, all the right to not forgive. You know, like, you could have been severely, you know, like, abused, offended, and legally, so to speak, you have all the right to not forgive. But they would say, but then you live in the Old Testament, and you just cut yourself from, you know, like, the New Testament completely, because God paid the price not only for you and your sins, but also for the sins of your enemy. So when you choose to not forgive, you just, you know, like, you decide to live in Old Testament, where, like, eye for an eye, and, you know, like, and the way you measure others, you measure for yourself as well. So you cannot, like, not forgive and expect others to forgive you, and, you know, like, you view you as a new creature, you know, creation is God. So I felt like that just, like, opened up a lot, and I asked for a prayer afterwards, but I was still, like, in the process where, like, it suddenly would come to the surface, but I still felt like it was almost unbearable burden, where I'm like, I still don't know how to forgive. Like, I can see the need to forgive now, but I still don't know how to do it. Thankfully, after that seminar, we had a worship session in the school. And I remember I was just crying on my knees, and I'm like, God, like, I don't know how to do it. You know, like how would you expect to forgive, you know, like, something that is still going on? And I remember God spoke clearly to me, saying, Liza, I loved you while you were yet a sinner. Would you do the same for them? And that really broke me because, as I said, like the month before, I feel like God was opening up to me so much, how much he loved me at my lowest, you know, like how his love was so unconditional and how he would pursue me, you know, like no matter what is going on, like completely unconditional. And being aware of that, it gave me so much grace to let go. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be like God. You know, like I'm going to choose to forgive while it's still going on because he loved me while I was yet a sinner. So I ought to do the same. And that began the journey. And honestly, again, like by the grace of God, I was able to let go pretty easily, emotionally. But there would still be practical issues. Meaning I was still am, attending a school of ministry that is an international school. So there would be representatives from all of the different countries, including Russia. And coming around that time of year, I was supposed to choose the ministry for the school year. Like, as a student, you're supposed to do some type of ministry for the whole year. And when I was going through the list, I saw briefly that they needed, like, translators for someone who would translate the services from English to Russian and all of that for, like, YouTube platforms and stuff like that. And I'm like, no. You know, like, I looked at her like, nope. Like, next one, like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I know I'd be pretty good at it, but I don't want to do that. Because I'm like, I don't know the people I'm going to be ministering with, you know, like, what if they're really pro-Russians, you know, and all of that. I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. But, again, God started my healing journey, and he told me to put it as, you know, like one of the options, and I did, and they chose me. And funny enough, the group of people I ended up ministering with, I met them at the very beginning of my school year. And there was like a Slavic gathering of people, and Slavic is almost basically a lot of countries represented, but all the countries that speak Russian. And there were way too many Russians. And my first meeting, I literally walked out of there crying because I'm like, I could not handle how happy people look. And, you know, it's just like, and all the freedom of choice that they had, you know, it's just like, I don't know, that there were like so many things that would trigger me, and I was like crying for meeting them. And that would be the same people I would minister with for the whole year, and how I would have to make a decision, you know, like to love them and to serve them and to serve with them. And God has made so many beautiful things from that ministry. But so I feel like not only it took me an emotional decision to let go, but it also took a practical decision of surrendering and loving people practically, loving those who, you know, persecute you. Not literally, you know, but to some degree.
Yeah. Definitely sounds like it wasn't something, like, forgiving Russians was not something you could have done in your own strength.
Oh, no.
It's something that only you can do with God. Yeah. I think the majority of situations, is that we don't have as much power as we think that we have. We have to depend upon God to forgive other people and to walk with him in that because of how he forgave us. Yeah. So. Well, Liza, I've enjoyed all these conversations. I've loved spending time with you this summer. But thanks for being here and for sharing your heart. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. And thank all of you for watching this. If this is your first time listening to any of the CCTri Podcast, we did have all of season 1 that aired earlier this year. So you can just scroll back on the podcast page and you can find all of those. There's 10 episodes of those, and I might be a little biased, but I think they are all great. That is also there, and we would really appreciate it if you would help us out by giving us a rating, review, and by sharing this with your friends. It really does help us reach more people with the gospel and with truth and all the spiritual wealth that are poured out in these. So we hope to see you back next week for another episode.